All right, welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're tackling conspiracy theories, diving headfirst into Codex Magica, a book that claims to expose the secret language of, you guessed it, the Illuminati. You know, that shadowy group that's always lurking in the background of, well, everything.
Yeah, we've all heard the whispers.
Exactly, and we've got the book right here, packed full of text and images, ready to decode it all.
So our mission, if you choose to accept it, is to figure out how the author, Tex Mars, connects these symbols to some pretty powerful people.
And of course, how he tries to convince us, the readers, that this whole Illuminati thing is the real deal.
Right off the bat, Mars claims the Illuminati communicate through a secret language of signs and symbols.
Okay, so far so good. Secret societies, secret languages. That's kind of their thing, right?
Sure, but here's where it gets interesting. He says he's found evidence of politicians and celebrities using these signs.
Whoa, hold on. Is he saying they're card-carrying members of this super secret club?
Well, not exactly.
No.
He insists he's not accusing anyone of being a Satanist or an occultist.
Okay, so what's the big deal then?
He just claims these pictures reveal a hidden code, a way for the Illuminati to communicate with each other.
So it's all about interpretation then. Like one person sees a hand gesture, and it's just a hand gesture, but to Mars, it's like a secret handshake or something.
Precisely. And he dives right into specific hand gestures, claiming they reveal membership in this elite group. Like, have you ever seen someone tuck one hand inside their jacket?
Yeah, I mean, especially if they're wearing a suit. It's a pretty normal thing to do, right? What's so sinister about that?
Well, Mars calls it the hidden hand of Jabulon.
The hidden hand of... Okay, that sounds a little ominous now. Who's this Jabulon character?
He claims it's some kind of hidden god connected to Moses, the I am that I am from the Bible.
Okay, getting a little biblical here. And how does tucking your hand in your jacket relate to this Jabulon?
Mars says it's a sign of allegiance to this hidden god. And he even provides pictures of some pretty famous figures supposedly making this sign.
Wait, like who? Spill the tea.
He's got Napoleon, George Washington, even Jerry Falwell.
No way. Jerry Falwell, the televangelist.
The one and only. Mars even has a picture of him with his hand tucked inside his jacket, claiming it's proof of his Illuminati connections.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. Take a common gesture, give it this whole other meaning, and suddenly it's evidence of a secret society.
Exactly. And it plays on our natural tendency to see patterns and look for meaning, even where there might not be any.
Right, like we're wired to connect the dots, even if those dots are totally random. So what other hand gestures does he flag as suspicious?
He talks about something called the fellow craft sign, which is made by drawing your hand across your chest.
That sounds kind of dramatic, like something a Shakespearean actor would do.
Well, Mars says it's much more than that. He claims it signifies someone who teaches the wisdom of the serpent.
The wisdom of the serpent. Okay, now we're getting into some seriously creepy territory.
Oh, it gets worse. He claims there's a gruesome oath associated with this sign. Something about having your heart ripped out if you betray the group.
Whoa, hold on. That escalated quickly.
And he's got pictures of people like Annie Besant and Boris Yeltsin supposedly making this sign.
Okay, so he's using shock value to make his argument more convincing. Like, the gorier, the better.
It definitely adds a certain level of intensity. And speaking of intense, he also tackles the devil's horns hand gesture.
Oh, yeah, the classic rock and roll salute.
Right, but to Mars, it's a straight-up satanic salute, no ifs, ands, or buts. And he uses some pretty vivid examples to make his point.
Like what?
He shows the book cover of True Vampires, which already has that creepy vibe going on.
Yeah, I can see that. Vampires, secret societies, it all kind of fits together.
Exactly. And then he throws in a picture of Chad Michael Murray, the actor, seemingly fletching the horns.
Wait, Chad Michael Murray, like from One Tree Hill?
The very same. And to top it off, he includes a Scotch whiskey ad with a, well, rock and roll Highlander making the horns.
So he's mixing pop culture with the occult to make it seem like these symbols are everywhere, even in the most unexpected places.
Exactly. He's trying to create this sense that you're surrounded by these symbols even if you don't realize it.
Okay, so even if you don't believe in the Illuminati, you have to admit it's a pretty clever way to get people thinking.
It definitely makes you look twice at everyday things. And it makes you wonder, is there anything that's truly innocent in Mars's eyes?
Right, like even the most harmless gesture could be a secret sign to him. What about the okay sign? That's got to be safe, right?
You'd think so, but Mars has other ideas. He claims the okay sign signifies approval of the divine king, who he equates with the Antichrist and acceptance of his plan.
Whoa, that's a lot of baggage for a simple hand gesture.
He even connects it to tantric yoga and associates it with female genitalia, and ecstasy.
Okay, that's a pretty wild interpretation for a gesture that most people use to say everything's all right.
He doesn't stop there. He uses a strange drawing to illustrate his point. It's got an egg, horns, and an eye all nested together, which he says further supports his interpretation.
It sounds like we're going down the rabbit hole here.
We are. And it's a rabbit hole that's full of symbols and interpretations that can either make you question everything or dismiss it entirely.
It's a bit of a mind trip, isn't it? So we've covered hand gestures. What about other symbols? Does Mars have any other favorites?
Oh, he does. Triangles are a big one. He sees them everywhere and gives them all sorts of meanings.
Triangles, like the ones we all learned about in geometry class.
Yep, those very same triangles. But for Mars, they hold much deeper significance.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what's the hidden meaning behind these triangles?
He claims an upward triangle represents the male and the material world, while a downward triangle represents the female and the spiritual realm.
So it's all about duality, like yin and yang.
Something like that.
Okay.
And he uses all sorts of examples to support his triangle theory.
Like what? I'm curious to see how he connects these shapes to the Illuminati.
Well, he points to George Washington's inauguration, noting that the Bible was open to a page with a triangle inside a circle.
Interesting. So he's looking for these visual clues, even in historical events.
Precisely. And it's not just Washington. He also shows pictures of Ariel Sharon and George W. Bush making downward triangle shapes with their hands.
Hold on. Ariel Sharon, the former prime minister of Israel, and George W. Bush.
The very same. And get this, Lincoln's bust is right behind them in the picture.
Okay, now that's just creepy. It's like he's creating this visual narrative that links all these powerful figures across time.
That's exactly what he's doing. He's building a case by connecting these visual dots, even if those connections seem pretty far-fetched.
And it's not just about presidents and prime ministers. He gets hyper-focused on a photo of General Claudia Kennedy, the first woman to achieve a 4-star rank in the U.S. Army.
Right, he's got a whole section dedicated to that photo. She's making a triangle shape with her hands, her eyes are closed, and her back is against a wall.
Okay, so it's the triangle hand gesture again. But why is he so fixated on this particular photo?
He points out all these details about the shadows and the bushes surrounding her.
Wait, the bushes? Like, what do the bushes have to do with the Illuminati?
It's like he's suggesting that even the smallest details hold some hidden significance. He's creating this sense of mystery and intrigue around these figures, turning them into characters in his Illuminati thriller.
I'm starting to see how this book could really draw people in. It's like a puzzle, and he's giving you all the pieces, but it's up to you to figure out how they fit together, or if they even fit together at all. But we've only scratched the surface here. There's a lot more to unpack in Codex Magica, and we'll delve deeper into Mars's arguments and persuasive techniques in the next part of our deep dive.
We've seen how Mars connects these symbols to powerful people and events, but I'm curious about how he actually builds his case. Like, what are the arguments he uses to try and convince the reader?
Yeah, there's got to be some method to this madness, right? He can't just be randomly throwing out symbols and shouting Illuminati every other sentence.
Well, you're right. There's definitely a strategy at play. One of his main tactics is to really emphasize the secrecy and exclusivity of these supposed Illuminati groups. Like, he wants you to believe that they have all this hidden knowledge, these secret rituals that they keep from the rest of us.
It's like that classic trope of the secret society operating behind the scenes with their own rules and agendas.
Exactly. And by playing up the oaths, the penalties for breaking silence, all the elaborate rituals he's creating, this aura of power and mystery around these groups, makes them seem more dangerous, more influential.
It's like he's saying, "Psst, come closer, I'll tell you a secret, but don't tell anyone else."
Exactly. And it taps into our natural curiosity, our fascination with the forbidden. He's also using a lot of religious language, especially when he talks about Lucifer, Satan, all that stuff.
Right, like he's not just saying these groups are secretive, he's actually demonizing them, linking them to evil forces.
Absolutely. He's tapping into existing beliefs, especially for people who might already be inclined to see the world in terms of good versus evil, spiritual warfare, hidden forces controlling everything.
So it's not just a conspiracy theory, it's a full-blown spiritual battle.
That's the narrative he's creating.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful one because it plays on people's fears and anxiety.
If you can make people believe there's a real threat out there, they're more likely to listen to you, right?
Exactly. And it's worth noting that Mars doesn't limit himself to just one religion or belief system. He pulls from Christianity, Jewish mysticism, even pagan traditions.
So it's like a buffet of occult beliefs. Take what you like, leave what you don't.
He's creating this kind of hodgepodge of occult knowledge. It can be pretty fascinating, even if you don't buy into it.
It's definitely a unique approach, but he also tries to ground his claims in history, right? Like, it's not just about abstract symbols. He tries to connect this to real-world events.
Oh, absolutely. He tries to show that the Illuminati have been influencing world events for centuries. Like one of his big examples is the Great Seal of the United States.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. All that symbolism he sees embedded in it. The pyramid, the all-seeing eye.
He claims the Freemasons deliberately included those symbols to represent their agenda, their plan for world domination.
Right, and he ties it back to ancient Egypt, claiming the all-seeing eye represents Osiris, the god of the underworld.
And then, of course, he links it to the serpent, which he identifies as Lucifer. So he's weaving this grand narrative that spans centuries, connecting all these different threads. Ancient Egypt, Freemasons, the Founding Fathers, the Illuminati.
It's a pretty epic story if you think about it, but does he offer any actual evidence to support all these claims, or is it mostly just interpretation and speculation?
He relies heavily on interpretation, that's for sure. He points to the fact that some people opposed the design of the Great Seal at the time because they recognized these supposed Masonic and Illuminist elements.
So he's using historical disagreements as evidence of a conspiracy.
In a way, yes. And he also brings in the figure of Haym Salomon, a Jewish banker who was connected to the Rothschilds.
Wait, the Rothschilds, as in the famous banking family?
The very same. Mars claims that Salomon bribed American politicians to get the symbols the Rothschilds wanted into the Great Seal.
Okay, now we're getting to some serious conspiracy theory territory. Secret societies, ancient symbols, powerful banking families pulling the strings behind the scenes.
It's like one of those movies where you have to connect all the red strings on a board to see the full picture.
And Mars is the one drawing those connections, guiding the reader to the conclusions he wants them to reach. It all comes down to interpretation, doesn't it?
That's the key. Symbolism is inherently open to multiple interpretations. What one person sees as a sinister sign, another might just see as a coincidence.
So context matters a lot. And Mars is creating a very specific context for the reader, one that's full of suspicion and intrigue.
He's basically saying, don't trust anything at face value. There's always something more going on beneath the surface.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the symbols, the interpretations, the historical connections, but I'm curious about the author himself. Who is Tex Mars? What's his background?
Tex Mars is a pretty controversial figure. He's been writing about conspiracy theories, the occult, all that stuff for decades.
So not exactly a mainstream perspective, then.
Not at all. He's often labeled an extremist, and his work has been criticized for promoting fear and paranoia. But he also has a pretty dedicated following of people who believe he's exposing hidden truths that the powers that be are trying to suppress.
So he's a bit of a polarizing figure, and that's something to keep in mind when you're reading his work, right?
Absolutely. His interpretations come from a very specific worldview, one that sees the world as this battle between good and evil, with these secret societies pulling the strings.
It's like he's created his own mythology, and he's inviting the reader to step inside it.
Exactly. And it's up to the reader to decide whether they want to accept his version of reality. But to do that, they need to understand where he's coming from, what his biases are, what techniques he's using to make his arguments.
So as we continue our deep dive into Codex Magica, we need to ask ourselves, is Mars presenting a convincing case for a global conspiracy? Or is he just seeing what he wants to see, connecting dots that might not actually be there?
That's the million-dollar question. And we'll explore it further as we delve into some of the things that Mars leaves out of his narrative. Because what's not in the book can be just as revealing as what is.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about how Mars interprets all these symbols, but I'm starting to wonder, what about the other side of the coin? What's missing from his grand Illuminati puzzle?
You know, that's a really important question. One thing that really stands out is that he doesn't really consider any alternative explanations for these symbols.
So he's kind of presenting his interpretation as the only possible truth. Like there's no room for debate.
Pretty much. He's so focused on his own interpretation that he doesn't even acknowledge that there could be other, more mundane reasons why these symbols pop up.
So he's not exactly being objective then. It's more like he's pushing his own agenda.
I think it's safe to say that. He doesn't seem to entertain the idea that there might be perfectly reasonable explanations for why someone might tuck their hand in their jacket or make a triangle with their fingers.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're just cold or trying to emphasize a point when they're speaking. Not everything has to be a secret Illuminati signal, right?
Exactly. Take that hidden hand of Jabulan idea. Isn't it possible that some people just find it comfortable to put their hand inside their jacket? Especially if they're, nervous or in a formal setting?
Yeah, it doesn't automatically make them part of some secret society.
Right. And what about that fellow craft sign, the hand drawn across the chest? Couldn't that just be a gesture of sincerity or emphasis, particularly in certain cultures?
It could be, yeah. I mean, gestures can have different meanings in different contexts.
Exactly. But Mars is so laser-focused on the occult interpretation that he doesn't even explore those other possibilities.
Mm.
And think about triangles, they're literally everywhere.
Yeah, they're one of the most basic geometric shapes. They've been used symbolically for, what, centuries?
Exactly. There have to be other interpretations beyond the whole male-female material spiritual thing that Mars is so fixated on.
Yeah, triangles can represent strength, stability, even the Holy Trinity in Christian symbolism.
Right, there's a whole range of meanings depending on the context.
It seems like he's kind of cherry-picking the interpretations that fit his narrative and ignoring anything that might contradict it.
It's like he's created a very specific filter for how he views the world, and he's asking the reader to look through that same filter.
So after exploring all of this, where do we land? Is Codex Magica a convincing expose of a global Illuminati conspiracy? Or is it just a collection of interpretations and speculation dressed up as fact? What do you think?
It's tough to say for sure. Ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide what they believe.
Right, we're not here to tell anyone what to think.
Exactly. We've just tried to give you the tools and the information to make an informed decision. We've explored the symbols, the arguments, the author's perspective, and even what he leaves out.
We've taken you on this deep dive, but now it's up to you to decide whether you want to take the plunge.
Exactly. Do your own research, think critically about the information you encounter, and most importantly, form your own conclusions.
Don't just accept someone else's interpretations without questioning them and considering alternative perspectives.
That's the beauty of exploring these kinds of topics.
Mhm.
It's not about being told what to think, but about engaging with the material, asking questions, and coming to your own understanding.
And who knows, maybe in the process, you'll discover something new and unexpected about yourself and the world around you. So keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. That's all for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.